We're here today at NetApp Insight 2025 in Las Vegas. Drawing on NetApp's multi-year AI maturity study with IDC, 54% of AI pilots are still failing to reach production. But today, as generative AI is evolving to agentic AI, intelligent data infrastructure is now enabling successful scaling. I'm James Thomason, Senior Technology Contributor at VentureBeat. Today I'm joined by Phil Goodwin, Research Vice President at IDC, who leads IDC's global research on infrastructure software platforms and multi-cloud data management. Tony Paikeday, who's Senior Director of AI Systems at NVIDIA, who leads go-to-market strategy for NVIDIA's DGX portfolio of AI supercomputing platforms. And Russell Fishman, who's Senior Director of Product Management at NetApp and leads NetApp's AI and data analytics solutions. Welcome.
Thanks, James.
Phil, based on NetApp's multi-year AI maturity study with IDC, what are the biggest barriers preventing enterprises from scaling AI successfully, and how have these challenges evolved from year one to year two?
That's a great place to start, James. And I want to explain just briefly for the audience what a maturity model is and how we create it. And basically what we do is we start with 1,200, a survey of 1,200 people worldwide. I think we had 11 countries. And we ask them questions about what are their business outcomes. And those fall into 12 categories, but it's things like revenue growth, profit growth, efficiency, and so on and so forth. Then we ask them what kind of IT activities they participate in and what their initiatives are. And then we are able to create a 0 to 100 scale of those. And from there, we're able to do a statistical analysis in order to correlate what the activities are to what the business outcomes are. And so that's how we create the maturity model. We then break it into 4 groups, which the lowest or the least mature group is the emergent, and then it's the pioneers, the leaders, and finally the masters. And we tend to look at the masters compared to the emergents because that gives us a lot of good comparative data in that regard. The real key difference that we discovered is that those companies that are masters spend much more time on the data and managing the data and getting the right data at the right place. In other words, that data pipeline. In fact, what we find is that those organizations spend about 70 to 80% of their effort on the data. Compared to the emergents tend to be really good at technology, but they tend to not value the data quality and the data processes nearly as much. The second thing that we learned is that the masters this year put a lot more emphasis on ROI of their projects. And when the statistic you cited that 56% of projects fail, if you think about your budget, whatever that budget might happen to be, if you have a 50% failure rate, you've lost 50% of your budget, you've wasted 50% of your budget, and that absolutely drags down ROI. So the organizations that are the masters are those that are now looking for tangible results from their projects.
Russell, for years, AI infrastructure conversations have been dominated by the need for greater computing power and chips. What is NetApp's strategy for elevating data infrastructure to a boardroom-level concern, and why do you believe that shift is essential for enterprises in the AI era?
It's an imperative. And one of the great things about the relationship that NetApp and NVIDIA have had over these last few years is realizing the importance of data in making AI real. And this is not about just having a POC and hoping for the best. As Phil mentioned, so many of these projects are failing. It's dragging down the ROI. I always say this, about your leadership, Tony, is that I always sort of love the fact that Jensen gets just how important data is. I was amazed by how much time he spent talking about data at his keynote at GTC this year. And folks were like, does NVIDIA sell data products all of a sudden? I'm like, well, no, they don't, but they are the folks that are sitting with organizations working on these amazing transformative projects. And what they are learning is that when you get the data right, your opportunity for success is just that much higher. And that's really the foundation of our work with NVIDIA. We're just an absolute focus on helping organizations unlock the latent value of their data and making it ready for AI, and using a combination of NetApp capabilities through our recently announced AI data engine with NVIDIA's capabilities, such as the NVIDIA AI data platform.
Tony, for executives focused on unlocking ROI from AI workloads as they look to 2026, how does NVIDIA's technology, in partnership with NetApp, help organizations optimize resources and deliver measurable value from their AI initiatives?
Yeah, I think about what, Phil, you had said earlier. Those who do it well have been more purposeful about their data infrastructure and their data platform. And we know this to be true, especially as we think about the rise of agentic AI and the fact that organizations will not just have agent-to-human interactions, but agent-to-agent interactions in huge scale, operating autonomously, right? And so when you think about the proliferation of agents, those agents all consume data. Data gives them context, the ability to derive insights and deliver answers that are much more effective, right? But if you don't have the underlying infrastructure and platform that ensures that the right data is in the right time, accessed by the right resources, right? And you don't have things like guardrailing, policy-based workflow, if you don't have AI pre-processing where the data lives, if you're fighting against data gravity because you haven't architected your platform correctly, if you have silos of data strewn across your enterprise, right, that you've accumulated over decades, if you don't have a unified platform, all of these things are the necessary ingredients for which NetApp and NVIDIA have been partnering to build the AI data engine based on our AI data platform reference architecture. This is why we're so excited about this, because we think that this technology, this integrated solution can enable any organization to AI enable their data and their applications and be able to really infuse every part of their business with it, starting with AIDE.
This is kind of a wild card, but I wanted to ask it because it's driving me insane. The idea of having master level, how did you phrase it in the report? Data masters?
The data, yes, the masters.
Data masters. Do you think that going forward there's going to be a minimum capital requirement to becoming a data master, or is it more of like an organizational size or organizational structure thing?
Well, it's the classic triumvirate of people, process, and technology. So you do have to have the technology in place, and it's not just speeds and feeds, but it's also the data management tools and those real elements that help you to get to that single source of truth. So I don't think it's so much the size of the organization or any kind of critical mass with regards to how much you can spend, but I think it's much more about how do you maximize your processes and how do you optimize your data.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I was wondering if we could have, if we could be little data masters even if we're a small company.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, this survey went from organizations with 1,000 employees all the way to more than 10,000, so it was across the board.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense. Russell, the report also showed that AI maturity functions like a scale. So what strategies can organizations adopt to move from the emergent level to the master level of AI maturity? And what role does data infrastructure play in that journey?
Organizations are sitting on a treasure trove of data, but I kind of think of it the same way I think about oil, right? It's crude oil, it's coming out of the ground. It isn't actually that useful in its more raw form. What organizations need are the technologies and capabilities necessary to refine that data into something that's more useful. And listen, AI is successful when you take a combination of, great infrastructure such as, class-leading GPUs from NVIDIA and, their frameworks, and then you combine it with the context of your data. Now, interestingly, it's not just the data itself, it's the data around the data, or the metadata, that becomes so important to be able to exploit that data well. That's one of the things we announced this week with AI Data Engine and the ability to bring the concept of live metadata, so metadata that's continuously updated. And that metadata is really the context of how that data becomes useful as it gets used within AI. So helping organizations cross that chasm, it has a lot to do with, firstly, not being funny, understanding that data is a challenge. Data is a challenge, right? I mean, you can't ignore it. And in fact, the organizations that don't look at data up front are the ones that tend to struggle.
Phil, the study found that AI masters prioritize resource efficiency. How does achieving AI maturity enable organizations to drive stronger sustainability outcomes?
It really is that upfront AI data process. At IDC, we call it data logistics. And it's analogous to package logistics. You have a product that goes into an appropriate container. It has a label, which is like metadata. It's handled a certain way if it needs to be refrigerated or whatever, but it needs to arrive at its destination intact and on time. Same thing with data. Data comes into the system either created by an application or ingested from somewhere else. From there, it needs to be stored appropriately, whether it's block, file, or object. It needs to have certain SLAs applied to it. Then it needs classification, it needs identification, perhaps it needs immutability, maybe it needs encryption, maybe it needs masking, and other sorts of data classification and tagging activities. From there, you need to also apply data trust. So things like data security, which by the way is, I believe, the #1 important buying criteria for organizations in AI, is that cyber preparedness and that cyber recovery. So you have data trust built into it, you have that single source of truth, and then you make it available to the learning modules, whether it's a LLM or an SLM or a vector DB or whatever it might be. But that's the journey of the data logistics. The top 3 reasons that AI projects fail are #1, a lack of governance, believe it or not. #2 is data silos, because if you can't get the data to the right place at the right time, especially in a hybrid multi-cloud environment, you're not going to be successful. And then the third is stale data that just simply has gotten too old and is no longer useful. So those organizations that are able to get the visibility across their enterprise, to be able to see the data as it is across that multi-cloud environment, are those that are most successful in dealing with the data and establishing that data pipeline with the guardrails that Tony talked about.
That's a good segue to Tony too. Tony, the report emphasizes the importance of intelligent data infrastructure. How does NVIDIA's partnership with NetApp help organizations advance AI maturity and scale their environments effectively, both now and in the future?
If you think about the announcements this week, what's happening? We're moving to a full stack co-innovation posture, if you will, right? At every layer in the stack, right all the way up to the developer experience and workflow, we are integrating our technology and capabilities that you now see in the culmination of AIDE, right? So now we actually have a purpose-built appliance for the age of AI that can enable organizations to mine insights from data at rapid scale. You take our, accelerated computing, our network fabric, our microservices, NIMs, guardrailing, inline vectorization, retrieval, all that's great software and the hardware, combined with NetApp's best-of-breed data platform capabilities, including data compression and security, RBAC, a lot of the things, honestly, that maybe folks take for granted, right? Because AI for the longest time has been a science project instead of a 24/7 mission-critical enterprise workload. Well, guess what? All these features that NetApp has are now mission-critical to running inference in production 24/7. So that's why we're so excited about AIDE and what it's going to do for businesses.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming today and sharing your insights. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
And thank you for watching. For more stories about the AI revolution, please subscribe to our newsletters and check out our other VB in Conversation videos at VentureBeat.com.